Welcome back to Warfare, and welcome to a video with a huge topic, AAA. In particular, I want to focus on the answering of the question, what about British AAA and the background thought process of that. I will do a massive comparison between all the AAAs in mid-tiers, so no tier 5 vehicles are included except the M42 Duster, but for all intents and purposes it's a tier 4, and I want to get a bit in the thought process of an upcoming possible change of the CAS meta. So what I'm talking about is what makes a good AAA, what might be one of the best AAAs in the game, what is the best nation therefore, how does it come into context, and what are the good sides and the bad sides about the current meta of Tank RB when it comes to the triangle or the rock, paper, scissors concept of tanks, anti-aircraft vehicles and planes. We also want to talk about a bit about the relevance of rocket CAS compared to bomb CAS compared to cannon CAS. Now with the upcoming patch 1.71, and this is the key aspect that I want to talk about, or that initiated the thought process to be more precise, we will see a overhaul of the mechanics, how rocket works. So from old damage models or game mechanics that they're currently working with still, they will be reworked to then work like big HE tank shells. And it was stated that the HVRs, the RP3s and the big Russian 132mm rockets will then act as 152mm HE shells from a tank. And when they say that, I assume it will be a KV2 shell, so that's around about 54mm of penetration. What that means is that a lot of the lightly armored vehicles still will be killed in one shot when they have a direct hit. Splash damage will be there, but not that significant. You still will rip apart tanks when you hit below them, so if you shoot through the track, so to speak. But also tanks such as the T95 from the side or the front, such as the King Tigers, Mouse, E100, the IS series of tanks, hell, even tanks like the Conqueror on the turret, or even the T29, T34 for the Americans might get back their value of armor. And I think that's a key aspect also to be initiated here. So currently the flavor of the month is to jump into a low tier AAA vehicle, rush the cap with the mobility of those vehicles and the low spawn points to cap it, bail out, get into an aircraft and rocket the Axis tanks, in particular into oblivion with HVRs and RP3 rockets. And that is a major point of criticism that I have. And this will be reworked, and I agree to that. I'm looking forward to do so. How it exactly turns out we will have to see, but the impact will be there. And now the question is, why do I think about British AAA? Well, a lot of people are playing the flavor of the month. They want to rack up the kills for one reason or the other, for feeling great, having the great battle results, having better silver line income. You know, the difference between tanks and planes is still there in terms of income, and especially silver. And also because they probably want to go for the God of War title, and it has never been easier than with rocket CAS. That's a known fact. Also, bomb CAS was nerfed with the removal of the holographic aiming circle, which really made bomb CAS even less important than it was before. So before that it was pretty damn accurate with bombs, but bombs have a weird splash damage, I have to say. And maybe we will see a revival of that, because the need for CAS support is still there, or close air support is still there, for one reason or the other. And I still think it's a good thing that you have something to shoot at with your AAA vehicles. However, it was just absurd how easy it was to rack up the kills with HVRs. So now it's much more difficult to one-shot especially heavy tanks and to rack up the kills like before. Maybe a not insignificant player base portion will play something else, will go back to RRB or play tanks instead of aircraft like you would expect from tank RB. However, going away from that process, we have to think about if bomb CAS and cannon CAS gets more important, maybe German planes will have more impact in the gameplay and they will be more used thanks to also the bigger rockets like Tiny Tims and Werfergranaten for the Germans. So Tiny Tims obviously for the Americans. But then the question is there, what will there be kind of a switch or copy paste from the meta of RRB with German teams into tank RB, so that we not just see more German planes that are being in the air because of less tanks getting just ruffle stomped at the beginning of the game and less allied planes in the air due to them being less popular, and then maybe see a copy paste situation from RRB where just simply German planes working together much more efficiently than the lone wolves in their allied planes. So then even German planes might be a big problem for the British and the overall allied teams. And then the question rises, what about British AA? What about it? How effective is it? And the answer is not too good. And this is why I now make this comparison right here. So before I go into picking apart the single tanks in comparison here, the overall idea is to compare here the overall important factors of a AAA, and they are different to what makes a tank very good. For a AAA, you want to preferably taking your target out with as few hits as possible, preferably a single hit. But also you want to make it easy for yourself to hit that target. So we need the caliber is important, we need the amount of guns, the type of guns, muzzle velocity, total ammunition count, together with the magazine / belt size in combination with the reload and also the rate of fire, and also the fact that you want to track your target, like with good turret rotation speed and good elevation speed of the guns, together with good firing angles, so very good gun depression / gun elevation. Furthermore, you want other things for your tank that are later on discussed, such as, or that I even can't discuss with this overview more or less, like survivability, mobility, effectiveness in the anti-tank role, what kind of ammunition do you have, how easy it is to switch your ammunition, do you have a full AP belt, and so on. All those factors are important. For the British, we can see that they are kind of average. The first one, the AC Mark II AA that you can see now, and before that the Crusader AA Mark II, feature both 20mm Oerlikon Mark II, two of them, and we have overall 600 rounds. We also have magazines of 120 rounds, so overall it feels like a Spitfire Mark IIB cannon wise, and we have a relatively high rate of fire of 450 rounds. That is for pure cannons the highest rate of fire that we have in this comparison. Furthermore, the reload for the AC Mark II is very high with 6 seconds, especially in comparison to the Crusader AA Mark II that has just 1 second. So that's a 600% increase in reloads. That's absurd. But furthermore, then the gun handling is kind of switched around. For the AC Mark II we have 60 degrees of turret rotation speed, but 40 degrees per second for the Crusader AA Mark II. But then again, the elevation speed is different, and so on. So you kind of can see there is no consistency. Then there is also the German AAAs, and they are overall very good, have very good things for them, but are also lacking in certain other things. Especially when we compare here the Wirbelwind to the Kugelblitz. So the Wirbelwind has 3,200 rounds and an overall 80 belt capacity, so 20 rounds for each 20mm gun. 450 rounds per minute is also very high. Times 4 is like 1,800 rounds per minute overall for all 4 guns combined. The reload with 4 seconds, you know, you have 4 guns, so you kind of can understand it. But then very good turret rotation speed of 60 degrees and 20 degrees of gun elevation speed. And then there's the Kugelblitz, and we have a single 1,200 rounds ammunition belt. We have also 450 rounds per minute per gun, but we have a 50-second reload rate, which is drastic. So within the German AAA, we kind of see the worst and the best. The best in terms of reload with 0.2 for the Ostwind and Coelian, and the worst with 50 seconds just in a cap circle possible for the Kugelblitz. Furthermore, from 60 degrees per second turret rotation speed down to 25 for the Kugelblitz, so it can't really track the planes. Then also from minus 10 degrees gun depression to 90 degrees gun elevation down to 7 degrees gun depression and 80 degrees of gun elevation. So you kind of see the very big difference in overall performance. Furthermore, we have other AAAs such as the ZSU-37, which has overall very bad stats. I talked about it in a video called the Russian AAA Dilemma, and overall it's a very complex thematic. And you can pause the video and obviously look at the stats yourself, but I hope you get the idea of what I try to say here. What makes a good AAA is simply too much asked for a single vehicle. Not a single vehicle can fulfill that roles. Especially the Kugelblitz has one big drawback. As long as it is not fully upgraded, you can't switch between the belts even when it's fully upgraded. But the last belt then is a very good universal belt, as we will see later on. Furthermore, there is the mobility aspect of a AAA, what you can do with it. Rush a cap circle and just cap it out, bail out with a lower tiered vehicle, and then go into a aircraft yourself, or repositioning yourself. So we can see here drastic stats between 70 horsepower and 600 horsepower, between 3.0 tons and 44.8 tons, resulting in horsepower per ton differences between 12.0 up to 23.3. That's a drastic difference here just between the 94 km 25 CIS-12 and the Coelian. Then there is also the top speed, the reverse speed, then what I cannot really state here is armor. Then there is neutral steering. Some of those vehicles are wheeled. We do not have too many wheeled tanks in the game up until this point, except certain German wheeled tank destroyers, or you know what I'm talking about, event vehicles. But overall, most wheeled vehicles or half-tracks are actually AAAs, the majority of them. But in my opinion, more important than the mobility of a AAA vehicle, which is still important in order to position yourself as close to the front line without being exposed to enemy tank fire to very effectively put down enemy aircraft, is the performance of your shells. The different performances of the belt selection and what you have available. And here I picked certain examples without, again, the high tier AAA. And the beginning is the AC Mark II AA. We have 40 millimeters of AP penetration, but no high explosive filling, which is true for all the AP shells except for the Coelian, the Ostwind and other German 37mm guns, and also that ZSU 57-2. We also have a muzzle velocity of 730 meters per second, and that is in this comparison the slowest. But you have a full AP belt, which is good, and you can switch between them. The HE penetration is 2mm, so that's at the lower end, but not really that important, as you shoot at aircraft that overall have no armor if you intend to hit their engines or intend to hit their wings. The TNT equivalent, we have no we have just no stats for that. Also, the muzzle velocity is again 730 meters per second, I guess. Then the Coelian has 65 millimeters of penetration and 22.1 grams of TNT filling. And that is very important because suddenly you have an APHE shell on a AAA. This is, by the way, the very same stats in terms of fragmentation and damage dealing compared to the ZSU-57-2. So with the Coelian you have quite some punch. Also it retains the penetration better than, for example, the Wirbelwind, which shoots HVR. 740 meters per second, again a full AP belt that you can switch in 0.2 seconds to. The HE penetration is much better for the upgraded Minengeschosse with 4 millimeters, and we have 108 grams of TNT filling. That, by the way, is the same filling, or nearly the same filling, as for the HE filler on the AP HE shell for the long 88. So you have a devastating punch, at least in theory. And 914 meters per second muzzle velocity is then the best in this comparison. Again, for the mine shells. The normal fragmentation shells are slower. This Hellcat really felt the pain. Then we also have the Kugelblitz, and the Kugelblitz is a weird mixture, and I have to kind of refer here a little bit to the Horton stats because they were not featured in the stat card itself. For the upgraded HWAP belt, we have 95 millimeters of penetration, and you can rack up even Soviet medium tanks from the side like you wouldn't believe. Just hit their engines, immobilize them, and just shred the crew and blow up the ammunition. And with 950 meters per second for the HWAP is here the best muzzle velocity for AP belt in this respect. But just every third shell is an HWAP shell. So you kind of have to target your target more or longer than with a full AP belt. But then I guess also the high explosive shell might be one of the best. On the Horton you have 6 millimeters of penetration according to the stat card, but we have no we just have no stats for the high explosive filling, and the muzzle velocity should be for the HE shell 800 meters per second. At least that's the one on the Horton. Again, those are Horton stats, so don't quote me of them, but it's very likely. Then the M60 with the 50 cals, just 26 millimeters for the AP belt and 887 meters per second is kind of average muzzle velocity. 4 out of 5 are pure AP. Now that depends on the belt. Actually, every round is armor piercing except some of the stock belt. And you have no high explosive shell, so you repeatedly have to hit your target, but then again you still profit from the buff to armor piercing damage effect that happened to be quite influential in air battles. For the 95 km 25 CIS-12 we have 26 millimeters of penetration with 900 meters per second muzzle velocity with a full AP belt. That is not too bad, and also 2 millimeters of penetration with 13 grams of TNT filling with 910 meters per second muzzle velocity for the HE shell. Furthermore, that ZSU-37, and that's a special breed because we have 102 millimeters of penetration for something that is an APCR round. It's simply an APCR round with 880 meters per second muzzle velocity. But then again, it's questionable if that's really the muzzle velocity of the HWAP round. And again, it's just 1 in 3. So you kind of have the same ratio as the Kugelblitz. And this is kind of a flavor to AAAs. However, you don't have the 2 guns, you don't have the rate of fire, you have still a reload rate that you have to deal with, and so on. You don't have the survivability and armor of the Kugelblitz. You're no match for the Kugelblitz, and also not the Coelian. So no wonder there has never been a war in mid-air event or rapid fire event where the Kugelblitz and the Coelion took part, because they just would devastate other nations' AAAs in a direct AAA versus AAA comparison. The M42 Duster, on the other hand, is again very well rounded. 76 millimeters of penetration, should deal with most enemy AAAs and also lightly armored vehicles. You have a full AP belt with 874 meters muzzle velocity, 2 millimeters of penetration for the 40 millimeter HE rounds with 36.3 grams of TNT filling and 874 meters per second muzzle velocity. Again, that is quite something. So I hope you got the overall comparison. I know it's very stat heavy, but so far I have not seen a overall good comparison for the AAAs, and this is my first take on that, and it should give you a very good idea what British AAA has to deal now. So for everybody that had Spaded, it's British AAA. You know what you're up against, but for everybody else that just plays just the flavor of the month, it will be a big change, and this is what we have currently now in the game, and it's just getting better for the Axis, I hope, and it's getting worse for the, or not as good anymore in the overall meta for the allied teams. So this is my third base capturing in this game. I had quite some impact, shot down a few planes, or at least one. I destroyed a lot of tanks with the previous tank and so on. Again, I was rocketed just before I could take the cap with the Coelion, and now I'm here with the Kugelblitz. And the big question is here, how to play with the Kugelblitz. Now I might do a few videos just with the Kugelblitz to really show what this vehicle in the right situation with the right tanker sitting in it can do, because this thing can absolutely devastate. It can absolutely murder anything. It's not even funny how devastating this vehicle can be. But also where the drawbacks are. Do you remember the turret traversion speed? Yeah, it's quite low. I think many people just refuse to play AAA because it's arguably the heaviest class to play within the game, for many reasons. I just tried to state a few here of them. The positioning is very difficult, so you have a continuously changing front line, if you have a front line at all, and you want to be very close to your teammates so you can intercept enemy planes before they can make their run. But also you have to pay attention, because with firing and the tracers you give away your position to enemy tanks, and they want the easy kill. You can't defend yourself against aircraft and tanks at the same time. However, you can try, and that is a very thin line that you have to try to walk on game after game. Then the income in terms of rewards for silver lines and RP is way too low in my opinion for AAAs, so many people don't bother and rather go into a plane and have 1 or 2 easy frags that give them more impact as a full well played game in a AAA vehicle, which is not acceptable. One good thing about AAA is the low spawn point cost, so even if you get destroyed in your first AAA, you can still even spawn a medium tank or another AAA, and that is something positive about AAA. But not everybody wants to fight the current meta. Not everybody wants to fight planes and tanks and AAA vehicles at the same time. Furthermore, it's just also a bad habit that people have to rush a cap it before everybody else can join them with capping, so nobody can also profit from the 300 spawn points that you get for capping a point. Even if you just participate in the capture of the spawn point for 1 second, you get the idea. And I think that should be something that changes. So to just rush a cap and then be able to go into a game without or a plane rather without, you know, too much effort, and then just devastate the enemy team or have such a big impact without too much effort is something that I dislike. And also playing AAA from the beginning is then also something that reduces the initial strike power of your team. So again, it is very, very controversial. It's very complex. However, I hope I could give you an insight into what we have to deal with here. That's it for me today, and thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Let me know in the comment section what you think about AAA. Did this comparison help you in any way, shape or form? Let me know. Furthermore, what are your tips and tricks to make AAA work? What would you want to see for them changed or being nerfed or buffed? Let me know. Furthermore, please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.